Okay. All right, we're ready to get started with the presentations. Hopefully I have the live streaming working. I see there are 0 people watching us. I just tweeted it out. The way this is going to work is everyone here who did something today, that includes having a discussion, editing the web page, writing code, even if your code doesn't compile. Come up here. You can come up if you worked with a bunch of people. Come up in a group, or send one delegate up to tell us what you worked on. If you do have something that you want to demo, you want to show us your web page or show us your code, you can project onto the screen. Who wants to go first? Okay, come on up.
Do you have may I use your laptop?
Sure.
If you already have it
Yeah,
plugged into this video. I want to do a quick plug for VMLP, if anyone here is a taker.
Let me see if this is going to work.
Do you have access to the newcomers spreadsheet?
Yeah.
If it's easier, I can plug in HDMI to my machine.
No, it's just a matter of. I mean, this is only the latest MacBook, so it does take 3 minutes to start giving me video output.
Well, I mean that's a huge improvement from the hour and a half it used to take.
I know. All right, here we go. All right, I have video up. You want me to bring up the hackathon? That was, let's see, it was in Slack. Is that right?
Yeah, I reposted in the main ZFS channel.
Okay. Here it comes. There you go.
Okay.
All right. There we go. And I'm going to ask everybody their name so that I don't have to be embarrassed by not remembering the people's names that I should remember. And then I'm going to put your name and project into this spreadsheet, which then we're going to vote on at the very end to determine who gets the awesome prizes.
Maybe I should just use my own.
If you forgot my name, Matt, I mean, there's a problem.
That's it. Actually, the HDMI cable.
Sure.
No. Of course. Sorry.
All right. Do you want to?
Yeah, let's plug it in.
So, that's not a touchscreen. That's not. What do you?
Control key.
That's not a touchscreen. Still not a touchscreen.
Yeah.
Man, get a hold of it.
I know. When you can't see the icons anymore, you know you have a problem. But I can see the icons when it reverts to the full resolution. It's only because I plugged in the HDMI and it's like slightly less pixels.
How that works.
Okay.
The idea that maybe.
First, I'd like to share a utility that I wrote because between ZFS send and ZFS receive, there's often just sort of a pipeline of weak little software to try to get your stream across to another, across a WAN or whatever. So I wrote a TCP standard input multiplexer that scatters anything it receives in on standard in across multiple TCP streams, terminates it on the other end, and guarantees the order. So if any one of the intermediate connections gets broken, it will restart it, and it is also able to parallelize the traffic onto multiple L1, L2, or L3 networks. So if you have like 40 gig InfiniBand, 10 gig E, and 1 gig fiber, it'll actually use all of those separate connections to push ZFS replication streams. And for the purposes of the hackathon, oh dear, where's that spreadsheet? Oh.
It's gone.
So,
I fixed a buglet where an unprivileged user would get an error about not being able to fix the import, and I've pushed it into Fabricator on FreeBSD, and hopefully it gets committed.
And what was sorry? What was your name?
Ash.
Ash. Who wants to go next? Yeah, come on up. And your project was how do you spell it?
Via millipede.
Via millipede.
Like,
Great, thank you.
Let's see.
So there you go.
So he's going to shoot if this works in Linux.
Linux technology demo right here.
Yeah.
Well, you got video output a lot faster than I did.
All right, let's see if we can make the screen correct. Oops. Can this do 1080p?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that worked. Great. It's a little bit. All right, fellow ZFS developers, are you tired of boring, drab, default status output? Do you seek excitement and adventure in your lives? Well, have I got a feature for you?
There's already excitement on that screen.
The new feature, ZFS status-A. And ANSI color in ZFS status.
Wow.
So this instantly draws your eye to the most pressing problems: the faulted drive, the read and write errors, the degraded pool. Very cool. But if you want to liven up the party even more, there is ZFS status-E for emoji support. So I think it got a little cut off, but now your pools and Vdev are marked with the correct icon. Thank you.
That's great.
What is your name?
Tony Hutter.
Awesome. Who's next? Sorry, I'm going kind of across scanning this way, so we will get to you. Don't worry.
all right. I worked with three things. On three things. I'm not going to present any of them. I'm just going to tell you. The first thing was Seraphim and I worked on the kind of newcomer track for the hackathon, which you also had presentation yesterday, and then we worked on more today. And we had, I think, some really good results from that, and we got some more people up and running, and I'm just really happy with everything we accomplished there. So everyone go check out our newcomer wiki page, and feel free to send us resources or suggestions for things you can things we can do to make it even more newcomer friendly. The second thing I did was I talked with Karen and Michael and Brian and Alan and some other folks about kind of open source community development. We talked about how to ask people for money and what kind of events in the ZFS community people find valuable. We also talked about the process for working on and creating community-wide code of conduct we kind of look at different communities like Stack Overflow and Django and other things, and then talk to Brian about how that could be incorporated into the ZFS on Linux GitHub situation, and just generally like what are the really great things we love about our community and how can we reinforce those things and basically like verbalize our culture and preserve it into the future. And the third thing I worked on was setting properties from channel programs, which is something I've been working on for a couple hackathons. And I mean, it's getting closer, and hopefully it'll like we set some things from channel programs now. But yeah, that's what I did.
Awesome. What's your name?
Sarah.
Who's next? Yeah, go ahead.
I need to borrow the laptop again.
Oh, you want to use my laptop?
Yes. You just put the GitHub page for VZVol, that's all I need.
It's gonna take a minute for it to. It's gonna take a minute for it to figure itself out, but that should go.
Oh.
Nope. No. Oh yeah, it's like
Oh,
under your account.
That works too,
Oh,
but
nice.
because this is the best logo in the world. So first of all, I want to thank Julian. He actually submitted a patch to help suppress some unneeded and kind of crufty errors that were popping up in the linter when we were checking the code, because VZVol is actually technically written in Ash, not POSIX SH, but I mean, every implementation of a shell supports Ash stuff, so not really a problem, but it was getting annoying and people kept opening issues. So Julian, I do want to thank you for that. Also, fixed a couple extant bugs, might have a lead on the biggest one that's been making me angry, thanks to Alan Jude yesterday, actually. For some reason, I can't create a ZVol that has ZFS on it right now, but working on fixing that. And yeah. Huh? Ah, okay. Well, see, there we go. There we go. Thank you, Alan. You just solved my problem. Also, I once again now have Linux packages available for VZVol. So, woo. And yeah, that's it. I'm boring.
Who's next? All right, go ahead.
Probably don't need to plug
Oh,
in.
you don't need to plug in, right?
Good. So before lunch, we talked about D-Raid, and that was a great conversation with people. And probably somebody will come up there, give more detail. And after that, I worked on a little project that fixes a performance issue with ZFS that somebody in here introduced it. If it was me. So it's the one where, well, one of the incarnations of it is if you're receiving a sparsely populated data set, so with a bunch of sparse files, it'll be super slow on incremental receives because it activates the write throttle when it shouldn't, because the write throttle doesn't take holes into account. But I just pushed a pull request to ZFS on Linux to fix that. And in my testing, it looks good so far. 4 times faster than the buggy version. That's it.
Awesome. What's your name?
Alec?
Got it. I did actually know your name. but I don't want to embarrass myself and somebody else. Okay, who's next? Yeah, come on up.
Oh, great. I forget my dog.
Oh, you can use it. You can use mine if you want. You have
Dongle
free
life.
power. Yep.
It's 2018. Our time with the dongle.
Yeah, it's the year of the dongle.
All right, great. Hi, I'm Paul Zakowski. I work at Dado, and we use ZFS on Linux. In previous lives, I used OpenSolaris and closed versions at other companies, but they were all Solaris-based. So I spent a lot of time gazing at dtrace scripts, trying to look for TXG oversubscription. It wasn't just a hobby. It was something I actually had to do every day because we were trying to get dedupe to work. So I missed not having those tools, and I realized that we do have the proc TXGs in ZFS on Linux that gives you some information. So it was an observability script that I tried to just pretty up the format a little bit for what I wanted it to do. So I have show you what the old format looks like. Oh, it's not quite wide enough.
Make the font smaller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
command minus. Maybe.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, you can just sort of you can see that the same transaction group is shown multiple times because, well, it's not multiple times. It's showing you. I just want the syncing. I just want the sync information in mind. So I want to know the bytes that were written and the elapsed time spent in sync. So I've got my new version here. The other thing, of course, the headers scroll away as you're tailing the old one. So I've tried to put the labels in line, and hopefully I'll be able to add to this as time goes on, and that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Who's next? All right, I'm gonna jump in, and then you'll be next. So I worked with a bunch of folks on the next generation of OpenZFS leadership. We talked about a bunch of the changes that are kind of coming down the pipe in terms of basically the center of mass of OpenZFS development. It is shifting / has shifted from Illumos to ZFS on Linux, and how we're going to deal with that. So the first thing that we're going to do to deal with it is to schedule a meeting, schedule another meeting, and then schedule another meeting. So we're going to set up monthly meetings. The meetings will be open to the public, but the goal will be to coordinate among leaders in all the different OpenZFS platforms. And the first kind of concrete thing that we want to do is get a handle on what features are in each platform's repos, and who is going to be responsible for getting, basically we want to assign responsibility for getting those features into all the other platforms. So for example, like encryption is in ZFS on Linux. It's not yet in Illumos or FreeBSD. So what who do we need to call, pay, bribe, etc. to get the job done? And same for all the other features going into the future. So that was me and like a third of the other people over there. So a lot of credit goes to Brian, both Brians, Brian Bellendorf and Brian Cantrell, for kicking my butt and making sure that we actually do something about this. So thanks.
A glorious dictator for life.
No, I do not want to be a dictator, and not for life. So.
You don't get to say no. Yep.
Try HDMI. Hopefully it's happy. Yeah, try HDMI. Let's see what happens. It was great to work with Sarah and Aaron and others on community things. This community is doing so many things right. I appreciate that. And hopefully I can get some video up. Windows, good. And thank you for addressing leadership issues, because it's so easy to just geek out and you know, hope that someone else will jump in and do it, but that's not always going to happen on its own. Display settings, please work. And let me know if anything shows up there. Otherwise, I have a big screen and I can just try to hold it out. Screw it, I have a big screen. I'll use that. Okay. So I love you all. I don't like tribes, so I pick and choose. And I see OpenZFS, and I think it's one of the greatest open source technologies ever produced by the human race. And I've been using ZFS on FreeNAS for quite some time, helping people get off cliffs and all that. Do not get to the cliff.
Love you too.
And for this session, I quickly verified that the NetBSD snapshots with ZFS drawn from FreeBSD are working. I brought them up in a virtual machine and created a little pool, destroyed it and all that. But in a brief moment to attempt to channel Jorgen, who blew all of our minds last year, what about the Windows question? It's a thing. He is fantastic to work with. He is responsive. And I have a witness. So he found that, well, we have to like set parameters, and kstat. Let's pipe it into grep arc, and we have arc parameters from real ZFS on real Windows 10. He still has debug information, so it'll bark at you with lots of lines of stuff. Ignore it. He's learned to ignore it. The status for tank, which is an MSATA device on this machine. And simple things like, let's just DD in 2 megs and do it again and again and again, and import, export. And basically at the moment, just kind of touch it gently, because there are points where if you hit the value of the arc, it just panics. It just does stuff like that. But it's a thing. And with git bash, you can have like a bash shell and use POSIX scripts and embrace a new platform with billions of users. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Michael. What's your name?
Michael.
Thanks. Who's next? All right. Well.
I finished my demo. It's an amazing demo. Everyone's gonna love it. It's so good. It's super impressive. Really incredibly technical.
Doesn't include emoji.
Yeah. No, there's no emoji. It's only ASCII.
I don't know how
Sorry.
you're gonna win.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna win.
Without emoji.
That's all right. I'm not trying to win. I'm just trying to show up and have a good time.
That's the right attitude.
Okay. That's okay. Yes, very good. Okay.
Hit enter once it gets it.
I'm trying. There's a beach ball. There continues to be a beach ball. This is going well. So how's everyone doing? Yeah, no, this is a demo about how OSX is bad.
Yeah. We had the Windows we had the Linux technology demo, the
And now-
Windows technology
right.
demo, and now we're having the Mac
Apple
OS technology
Right.
demo.
We can see which of these platforms is doing best.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so my presentation consists entirely of 2 commands. One of them is manzfs. And if you go down here, there's this new paragraph, which explains that we are going to deprecate ZFS dedo, send. And then if you do, this, there's now a warning message that is printed at the beginning of the ZFS send command that tells you that we're going to deprecate the feature. So I spent most of my hackathon coming up with language for this and writing, spent most of it like in the conversation with Matt and the other people, but then I spent the last part of it writing up the language for this and creating the issue on GitHub where people can come and yell at me because this is a terrible idea. So I will.
Add the URL that you have in the man page to the warning.
Yes, I can do that as well. But yes, people should send me comments about how bad the idea is or good the idea is. So thank you.
Awesome. Who is next? Yeah, come on up.
Do you have a magic dongle thing?
I do. I have a One of these.
Other end of this too.
Oh, this is a different dongle than what you have.
Dongle me.
This is a USB-C. I think there is a. Oh, here you go.
Here we go.
There you go. This is what you need, right?
That'll work. Maybe.
Yes. At least it'll plug in.
It plugs in. Is it mirror mode, do you think? Chances are. Hey, great. So in ZFS on Illumos Solaris, we have this really cool sysevent infrastructure, which is really damned handy if you just want to say, hey, here's an event, something happened, somebody else deal with it. And then somebody else can subscribe to them and you get them and it's great. And so when the port to ZFS on Linux, it kind of didn't exist, I guess, in some of the old versions of Linux, sort of an OS level event system. And so thus begat Z. Z is the ZFS event daemon that plugs into this thing. So we use one source code for OpenZFS, and then the sys events then get translated and they show up in Z, and Z, then you can write scripts that subscribe to these things and do something with it, which is very cool. So back in the day with sys events, I wrote this little thing that would take Z events or sys events and then throw them into InfluxDB with some information. And this is it. This is an enormous amount of hard work I did. Actually, just finished it here. But more importantly, I think, is what you get out of it. And what you get out of it on your graphs like this is these events. So at some point in time, something happened. And then I'll start over here. And you see here, it pops up and it says the sys event with a pool of export. And then diving or ziving is the name of the pool. I have a ziving pool. Okay. What's the next guy here? Config sync, which happens after you do an export, of course, and config syncs you'll see fairly often for various things. History event, what do I got here? Scrub start. Yeah, so scrub started and there's not much data there and it finished in just a few seconds. But that way I can relate then what's happening in the system through events. When you have an error or something and that occurs and your latency goes to hell, we can show that up in the same dashboard. So that's it, little trick. Oh, I think we'll probably put this into the Z config stuff, and then those who use InfluxDB at least could leverage it and pull it out. That's it. My name's Richard.
Richard, quick question.
Yeah.
The targeted towards Linux only right now? Or is there anything in that
I've got one for Illumos, and I don't know about BSD, but
You can make one for Dev.
we have something like that.
We have Dev, which you can recipe file with the data.
So you might want to collaborate on one?
Pretty picture, doesn't it?
Who is next? Okay, come on up, Tim.
I think I probably the same.
That's right.
What mine is. No idea. On my screen is set up. Okay. Let's try and find that guy. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. The demo will come at the end. So what I was working on is the ability to abandon a pool when one of the underlying disks or frequently single Vdev stops working. The driver goes to lunch, whatever. This has been kind of a commonly requested thing amongst many ZFS on Linux users, particularly those that are using like network style backends that talk to cloud services, S3, whatever. a lot of companies have their own proprietary thing, and it's amazing how often they just stop working. And the I/O request gets sent, and for whatever reason, the completion never gets back. So that's the problem that we're trying to deal with here. Well, the real problem is that when this happens, generally speaking, the only recourse to recover is to reboot the system. And if the system has additional pools on it, well, now you got downtime, the system has to reboot and everything. So this was a research project today that I just started. I'm on my way here to see whether this is even possible. And it's something I've been thinking about for quite a while. A lot of possible different approaches, but I actually kind of got it working today here during the hackathon. So the approach that I took is I leveraged a facility that I think might only be in ZFS on Linux right now, and it's sort of an extra feature of our Vdev and ZIO deadman. It kind of leverages some of the logic in what's called the continue mode, which was developed some time ago to deal with more transient type of errors where say a SAS fabric or something would drop a completion, and again, the whole thing goes to lunch because generally speaking, the default mode is just to wait and wait and wait and wait, and if the completion never comes back, the pool hangs. So this extra feature that's in ZFS on Linux is deadman as a continue mode, and what we do is we kick the ZIO pipeline with a ZIO interrupt, and that essentially causes the request to be sent again, and everything kind of wakes up and works. This is kind of leveraging that infrastructure a little bit. So my plan to make this work was to, as I said, build something into that infrastructure. So what I've got right now that I'm going to demo is actually a test bed. I'm running my test machine in the left window, and it's a VM guest, and it has a pool on it that we're going to look at. And I've added some testing framework to the kernel right now to help me learn about whether this is possible. I did start integrating it into the zpool export command with a new argument. At the moment, I'm not actually sure what to call the feature: abandoning a pool, aborting a pool, discarding a pool, something like that, whatever. In any case, there are some issues of ordering of operations that I ran into trying to integrate it actually into the zpool command. So what I demo here is actually going to be using my testing framework, which I'm going to briefly describe. In order to test this feature, I have built I've added a Linux tunable parameter into which you can write a string that's the name of a Vdev. And that will cause the Vdev disk driver to not request a completion event for the next I/O to that disk. And therefore, since it doesn't request a completion event, we don't get a completion event, essentially simulating this condition. That's what I was trying to do. So right now, I've got the system set up with that feature enabled, and also I have the continue mode of the ZFS, excuse me, of the ZIO deadman enabled right now. This didn't really take a whole lot of changes to get to the point where I could actually export a pool. As I said, it actually does work, and I can unload the ZFS module, and I can load it again and import the pool again, and everything is fine. The major bug is memory leakage. Because of some of the shims I put in, I'm going to have to figure out what else needs to be freed in order to turn this into an actual production feature. And there's a couple of other minor issues in that I am currently relying on Linux's lazy unmount feature, which I think the equivalent of exists in most other OSs, which allows us to detach a file system from the namespace, regardless of whether there are files open or anything like that, because normally the VFS will refuse to unmount a file system. So those are some other little complications in this whole thing. But anyways, here's my, let's just see if I can do my demo. I got to put the screen in mirror mode right now, probably so we can see it. Maybe I don't. Okay. So what we've got here is a, I'm trying to remember where I left this thing off. I can't type with a crap on a low keyboard. Okay, I've got the pool ready to go. It's got dev SDA4 in it. That's the only Vdev in the pool. I have a little script called break, and break is going to break this. It's gonna trigger the shim that I have to drop a completion. That parameter up there is, this is also part of my experimentation, is I wanted to figure out what error we could plug into the ZIO to kind of mollify the rest of the pipeline and the TXG layer and everything else. So right now I'm playing with EIO, which is error 05. Ultimately, I don't expect this is something that would be a tunable. This is here again strictly as part of the test platform. So that little bottom statement right there, it says we're just going to drop a completion on dev SDA4, and that's going to cause the whole damn thing to hang up. That window right there is on the left window is on the console of the VM. So we'll be able to see the console messages. I added one console message to be able to tell that the dead man has actually triggered the feature. So what the feature is I added a new flag to the SPA structure called, and right now I'm calling it SPA abort. So the SPA abort flag is set. That handles sort of the other end of this. The ZIO dead man is handling the lower end and making sure that the IO pipeline doesn't stall. And the goal of that is to, right now, tell the system that the pool is screwed and needs to be abandoned. And the main effect that has is it causes ZIO to break out whenever it times out. That's what's part of the dead man. So I think there's anything else. So yeah, as I mentioned, I've got this working, and I then went and started adding all the infrastructure to the IOCTL and the zpool command and everything else. So there's actually an argument that you can use. But as I said, there's sort of this ordering of problem. There's this ordering problem in that the unmounting has to be done at just the right time, et cetera, et cetera. And I also need to rely on the lazy unmount feature, which is not directly supported right now by the libzfs library. Actually, it is, but it actually has to be used. So a few other complications there. Now, let's do the demo here. So the demo is going to be this script right here, which is going to destroy a data set, create a data set, and then just start rsyncing the whole system over to it. So there's a lot of stuff happening. So I'm going to fire that up right now. And it's running now. The data set didn't exist. So now we're copying stuff. And we can see that it's writing stuff out to it. Okay, now I'm going to break it. And I'm also going to, oops. There we go, kill my rsync commands, which prior to this feature, half the time you couldn't even kill those rsync commands because they've got files open on the pool. And I think we'll find right now that if I even just try doing this again, the rsyncs aren't even running anymore. So they got killed. And we can see that the SPA abort flag got set. So now the SPA is in abandon mode. Okay, this would normally be something that would be triggered by, right now I'm using zpool export -A, but as I said, that doesn't work because I've not finished the whole upper user interface part of this. So now we have to manually do some of the things that zpool export would do. So we need to unmount the file systems. I've got to do that by hand right now. as you know, zpool export normally unmounts the file systems. It gets the names of the file systems, it sorts them in reverse order, and it unmounts them. Okay, I know.
You're running short on time here.
Okay, sorry about that.
This is very cool, though.
And here we go. And it exported. Voila.
Cool.
I made a pool go away. Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, I will show you the bug. Watch what happens if I unload the module. And I don't think it's going to be terribly hard to find all these memory leaks, but who knows? Maybe that's going to be a showstopper.
Yeah.
Oops, there's my slab leaks right there. But, I mean, I can make myself a kernel that will tell me what those things are, and I'll be able to find them. So, there you go. That's
Awesome.
it.
What's your name?
Tim.
Who's next?
I sat in on or I participated in the D-RAID working group, and also in the Vdev properties. I'll let Pavel talk about properties. For the D-RAID working group, we came up with a list of tasks. Richard was sort of our secretary scribe, so we'll put that. I opened up a D-RAID channel on OpenZFS, so if you want to participate, join the channel. And I reached out to my colleagues at Intel to get the test code that's missing from as a pull request, and they agreed to get it to us. So we'll be having that shortly. And then I took an attempt at rebasing to the latest master, and down to 4 files and 12 collisions, and it's mostly the, let's see, checkpoint and device removal. Our friends, my friends from the past. I recognize, those guys. So anyway, that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Don Brady. I do know my coworkers' names at least.
Okay. Also, we worked on the ZPool properties. So, Vdev properties. So how to set per Vdev properties, and we had a discussion group with Alan, Brian, and Don as well. And George actually came with quite a good help at some point and set all of our fantasies straight. So, so essentially, the idea here is going to be able to set some Vdev specific properties, and in the first iteration, it's only going to apply to top-level Vdev. So properties which we are intending to set are things like all the different Vdev queue allocation settings. Then we're going to be able to not set some Vdevs that we don't want to allocate any data to. We're going to also be able to get some Vdev properties such as some stats like how much do you allocate to it, how many errors is there in this particular Vdev, and fragmentation level, etc. So there was a few complexities of how we want to do the set part, how we want the administrative command to look like, and I think we figured out the hardest ones of those questions. And we haven't created the OpenZFS Slack channel yet. I think that would be a good idea to do. And we took a picture of our scribbles on the board. I think, Alan, you have volunteered to make these things take light. Yeah.
I have a bit of a prototype already, but I think we're going to change the command line interface around a little bit, specifically so that if you want to get 3 properties, you don't have to specify the Vdev name 3 times. Because that's and we've decided that setting properties on leaf Vdevs was going to make things too complicated to start. Specifically, when you get in the case of you do a zpool replace on that, and then where does that information come from? Or you do a detach on a mirror, and suddenly that leaf Vdev is both a top level and a leaf Vdev at the same time, and which property wins? And so on. It just minimum viable product will just be, and as George told us, for the QDEVs, it doesn't make sense at a leaf level anyway. So we'll do that. And then we also talked about how to extend the allocation classes and what controls we'd want for that. And I think George made the good point that once we have a prototype of this and maybe people start using it, they'll be able to tell us what use cases they actually have rather than us just trying to imagine what people might want to do. The only one that we saw that where a leaf property has a strong use case right now is when you have a mirror where one half of the mirror, one element of the mirror is remote somewhere. And you might want to say, when you're doing reads, I'd really like you to bias towards the SSD in my machine and not the iSCSI that goes to the other coast.
You could just say like bias equals child 1 versus child 0.
That was
our idea.
have some hacks for sure.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. Can I get a show of hands who would also like to tell us about your hackathon project? How many people do we have left? 1? Is that it? Okay. 2? Okay.
Say what I did.
Just trying to gauge how much time we have.
Well, I wanted to do something with ZIOs, kind of inspired by the talks yesterday. Thanks, George. I don't have too much to show. I finally had some different ideas. So I finally settled on was I remembered these conversations from my past. So it was kind of like Mythbusters. Is this true? And what I heard in the past was with the ZIL pipeline, the rewrite pipeline, there's just a lot of extra overhead in the ZIOs. There's stuff we don't usually use. There's 2 sides that we in the tree that we produce for mirrors, and you don't always mirror your logs, and there's all this stuff. And plus we reuse some of the same stages that we use for the other, for the sync spa, the spa sync, and those are designed more for this idea of let's figure out this big tree and then figure out how to do it. So it makes sense to me, at least, that it's kind of a different use case, because with the ZIL, it's just, here's one piece of data, write it out as fast as you can, rather than we have all this data. So I don't have an answer, but I wanted to find out, is that true? And so would it be worth it to investigate sort of a lightweight ZIL pipeline? I thought I would show some of this because it's just maybe highlights still how the ZIO pipeline works. So the first thing here is in the ZIL, I put this flag in just so when my code blows up, I can still reboot and don't get in a panic loop. So when I want to engage the code here, should I make it bigger, or is that not too bad? You can see I've just added this new function, ZIO intent log write, which is right down here. And all that does is really it comes down to instantiates, well, passes in a different pipeline. So that'll be used later. So this is a new pipeline. That was pretty easy to create. Not that I didn't have a few missteps. So down here, you just define it as just a bunch of different stages that there's kind of macros that are kind of built up on each other. What this comment is I took everything that was in the rewrite pipeline and broke it down into what the stages were. And so what I came up with here is I have an async issue, which it just made sense. That was the first stage, issue that async. And then I just thought I could do it in 2 stages because there's one stall, like George described. As I went through all the stages, there was only one that returned a null ZIO at the end of each stage. If you're just going to go to the next one, it just returns back to ZIO. I found one stall. So it seemed like normally one thread would do the first half, and then that would stall, and then another thread would come in. So anyway, I thought I would just try 2 stages. What do those stages look like? Let me actually show you an older version here in my diff first. So I started out with something that's pretty stupid. but I just called the stages the way they already were, just to kind of see if it would work. That seemed to work, and as a way forward, that wasn't too bad. The nice thing about it was then I could put a breakpoint in here and then just kind of step through and see what that stage did in that context, and then hopefully that would help me figure out what is the common case. So I was just kind of working through those and didn't get all the way through them. I did, if I'm understanding things right, it seems like most of those stages in right start don't do much for the basic common case for the ZIL anyway, so I got rid of a bunch of them. But I'm not real confident on that. It hasn't been well tested. So maybe there's something there that would help you in understanding how the pipeline, ZIO pipelines work. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
You just want
Yeah.
HDMI?
Thanks.
While he's setting up, did anybody have problems with the Wi-Fi today? Amazing. Wow.
It was my fault.
All right.
It's always one.
Okay. Right. Okay, first of all, I said before that I come from Barcelona, but I work in Ireland. So one of my colleagues told me, "Oh, you are not. You didn't tell that you work with an amazing team in Ireland in Cork." So yeah, we work in the amazing Ireland. So just wanted to say that, and that folder is called Ireland. So I remember this time. Okay. So what I did is something very simple. The thing is that sometimes when you execute from command line ZDB or some ZFS zpool commands, they lock. So you get stalled, you get there, or when you have a hardware problem, or if Z is killed and somebody removes several drives, at some point you get IO suspended, and you can get like non-responsive commands, even if you try to kill them. That's especially bad if you have crons that do something based on scrapping from zpool status or whatever. So what I did is something very simple, which executes the command with a timeout, and if not, it kills it. So to show that very, very simple, I will ls from my folder with a timeout of 5 seconds. That comes instantly, and in the first line, I have the error level of this command. So it's 0 because everything works. If I put a random directory that doesn't exist, it brings error level 2 from ls, and the error message has been captured. Standard output and the standard error. Sorry. Okay. Perfect. Just in time. Okay. So so the idea about that is that you can launch ZDB or whatever. You can set a long timeout. I will show with this. We sleep for 10 seconds and then we do ls. And what will happen is that will fail because it will not execute in 10 seconds. So it's broken with an error level of 99. So the idea of that is that you can automate this. You can call this script from other programs or whatever, or from your crons, instead of calling ZDB or zpool status or whatever. You call this script with a timeout, for example, 10 seconds, and then the command, and you get the error level. Also, when you are under heavy load, rebuilding, copying, etc., a simple command like ZFS list or whatever can take a lot of seconds. It can happen that you
wait for 20 seconds or whatever, and you can have like a chain of several commands in there. So that's it. It's very simple. It's based on shell scripting, but it helps. It helps me. So
cool.
Thank you.
Oh, I was looking for that. The laser.
Hi, I'm Tom. So I just basically did a few things where I had a lot of really helpful discussions with quite a few people as part of the E-Raid discussions. And then afterwards, Matt, George, and I worked on a bug related to Arc where we found out that maybe hatch locks are not quite as safe as we thought they were. And so we're going to be doing some work to try to figure out what can be done about that. We think we know what's wrong and we think we know how to fix it. But we have to get the problem to the point where it's reproducible first. It's always the hardest part. And then the other thing that we did, Matt and I looked into some of the issues involving encryption and key loading and came up with a solid solution for how to do that as soon as I get back.
Thanks, Tom. Any last people? Anyone else? Yeah, coming up. Do you need this one? No, you need this one.
Yeah, hi. I'm Prashant, and I worked on trying to get some visualizations for the DX state. So Seraphim has added new SGD probes, like static probes, in the code for the change of transaction states. So it's between like open to queries to syncing to sync, as you can see here. So we're trying to also utilize. We're trying a couple of visualizations. One was with the state maps. So let me just show you. We were able to this is a very small sample. So we were able to see kind of the state map transitions using this one. And you can see like TXT numbers here, and you can zoom in and do more things. So that was mainly one part. Still trying to get our heads around the state map. And the other thing was Seraphim had an idea to kind of use like a Gantt chart using Python. So we were trying to get this, but this is not the actual one. This was another example. So we were just trying to get a different visualization based on this one too. And here you can see like a sample raw output of raw JSON output of the whole TXT state transitions. This is using DTrScript on Illumospace ZFS system. So
the entity there represents an actual TXT.
This one?
Each row represents a TXT.
Yeah. Yeah. This one? I mean, each TXT?
Or it looks like each is a TXT and a state. So it's saying like this TXT went into
this state.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I use the tags example from one of from the GitHub where we're tagging with the DSL pool T, which happens to go with the TX here. So you can do more kind of tagging. So by the way, adding the tagging method was great. That helps a lot. You can do different things.
You generate metadata for the tag. You should be able to bring that up.
Okay.
So if you go click on what did you tag today? Which state did you tag? Which tag all? Click on one of those states.
One of the states. Okay, let's say sync. Oh yeah, here tags, or the tags should show up on the right.
If it worked.
No, it didn't work.
And yeah, so that's where you need to just declare metadata for those tags.
Okay.
Did you declare any metadata for the tag?
Did I what? Sorry, clear?
So
declare metadata.
Declare metadata.
Yeah, so somewhere it needs to know, it needs to just commit like this hex value has this other data associated with it. And then you'll be able to like drill down on all that.
Oh yeah, I mean, so this is kind of the metadata states I added.
Yeah.
So you have like.
Yes, you just need to admit somewhere you need to explain what those tags are.
Okay.
So it knows how to annotate. Like, if however you, what are you actually? What's the argument of TXT?
Oh, so for
The
example,
arg0 that you want.
yeah, arg0 is the DSL pool. It's a pointer to a data structure.
Okay.
DSL pool.
And so whatever's in that data structure that's interesting.
Yeah, I should make it more like an idea or something that I can bring it from. But
Yeah. If you just admit something that dumps that out, you get a lot more.
oh, okay. I think yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if I get more details of this particular argument, I can get more.
And if you click on the right, so go to back to so you click all the way on the right, but it's a little more interesting, like over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the right. Yeah, you for the right, and then zoom in. There you go.
Yeah. So here you see more. Like how long it was in the syncing state versus when it went to sync. Actually.
Cool. That seems like you need to run that on
Yeah.
our production systems.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, that's all I have. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Thanks.
Who's next? Potentially last.
If no one else has something, that's something I wanted to ask of the community.
Yeah, go ahead.
Possible.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We'll probably be able to hear you better.
All right.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to take the opportunity to finish up the voting thing. So this is perfect.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with the hackathon today. I did just post a brief blurb in the Slack if anybody saw that. What I'm pretty sure none of you know is that for the last 3 years, I have been running a Linux distribution called Sanity Linux. Originally it was called Pure Linux, and everyone gave me crap for the name because I spelled it with a U with an umlaut. So now it's Sanity Linux. And it's kind of been in a coma for a couple years because I don't particularly have many people to work on it. The thing that makes it relevant for here is that I am trying to ship ZFS as a first-class citizen. Take it a little further than what Ubuntu did back in 1604, and actually ship a ZFS kernel module along with the installer, have it load as part of the installer, actually be able to install ZFS en route from the get-go, and then have it installed as a loadable kernel module that loads on boot every single time, so you're good to go. There's a lot of extra crap that goes into this. I am one person who is not very much of a programmer, and running a distro is a little beyond my skills. Admittedly, it was a very ambitious project when I started it. It is something I want to bring back to life, and if anyone would like to contribute, one-offs, maybe lend some help, maybe help me get it a little better organized. I would love to eventually, hopefully come back next year or the year after, and be able to talk about shipping a Linux distribution that ships ZFS as a first-class citizen. So, yeah, you can find online, sanitylinux.org.
Cool. Thank you. All right, everyone, take out your devices. Go to Slack. And in the OpenZFS main OpenZFS channel, I posted a link to a Google form. Please submit one vote. This is open for folks in the stream as well. If you've been watching, I know how many of you there are, so please do not abuse it. This is the first time that we've allowed voting from non-local participants. Hopefully it won't be the last. And we'll have voting open for just a couple minutes before we announce the prizes. Yeah, you can only vote for one. You have to decide on your one favorite project. I know, it's very difficult.
Submit another response. Excellent.
Don't do that.
That's naughty. Come on.
Don't do that. This is the honor system.
400 votes. How much
Could you unplug? Yes. Karen, any announcements that we want to make?
No, just help cleaning up is appreciated. So pick up around you. Everybody takes a chair to the back. It'll be so much faster, and I can go to sleep.
Yes. Great. All right, I have 28 responses. Are you still working? Who is still making up their mind? Nobody's still making up their mind? Ready to close voting? All right. Closing the voting with 29 responses. Okay. Ah, great. We do not have a three-way tie. Let me, that's good. For some reason this shows up really weird, but this will work. Nope, it's not. We have three different top places. So, in first place, with 27% of the votes, Tony with Z pool status and color. All right.
It's lit, Tony.
Please select your choice of these awesome prizes. Oculus, Fitbit, or 2 different game systems. Okay. Enjoy the Oculus. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. Oh, you just all right.
Put it over the green. Put it over the green, but not over the white. Yeah.
Oh, okay. In second place, with 17% of the votes, the Vdev properties folks, Pavel, Allen, and Brian. I'm going to let you guys select 2 of the remaining 3 prizes, and the third will go to the group. So, select 2.
So we are 4 people, so going to the
Yeah, you can have like a time sharing agreement or something. Pass that Fitbit around. Okay. Yeah. There we go. All right, and in third place with 13% of the votes, Sarah and company with the newcomer track, How to Ask for Money, and I mean, personally, I think maybe what put you over the edge was setting properties from channel programs. So, congratulations. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And who was this the first OpenZFS hackathon for anyone? Yeah, quite a few people. Thank you all for coming. I hope to see you again next year. I hope to see your pull requests in the meantime. I think we're
I'll be sending out a survey.
yeah. Well, we're going to send out a survey later this week.
So we can make it better.
Yeah, just asking for feedback, asking if your company wants to sponsor the next conference. And as I said yesterday, like you guys are what give me enthusiasm to continue working on this for hopefully another 17 years. With that, thank you, Delphix, for hosting us today. Please, I see one coworker over there. Yeah, please help us clean up and leave the place in good shape. I think Karen and I need to leave pretty soon, so we need to probably clean up and get out of here by 5:30. Thanks.
Hey, one more question. So we have an extra day scheduled for just working on